All right, welcome back to part two of learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with the Monty Hall problem. If you haven't watched the first video, please go back and watch it. We're jumping in the middle of that code from last time. If you remember right, we finished the script of our game. We could even click buttons to show the next sections. And the restart game hid all the sections as you would expect. But if we click the button 3, it still says you've initially chosen door 1. So that's what we want to fix right now. So if you recall from last time, we had called the choosEnitialDoor function from our onClick attribute inside of our button. So we said button number 1 is inside this button, and when you click that, call choosEnitialDoor. We did the same thing for button 2 and 3. And we said no inputs go inside this bracket because we don't really need them right now. No matter which button they pressed, we just wanted to show the next section. Well, now we do want to know which button they pressed, right? So we want to actually send in the door number that was chosen as an input. So if they click button 1, we want to send the input 1 to our choosEnitialDoor function. And if they click button 2, we want to send the value 2. And not surprisingly, if they click button 3, we want to send the value 3. Now, we need something, a name for this input down here in choosEnitialDoor. We've sent one input in and we have not listed any inputs to our function, so that would be confusing. So we need to give this thing a name. I'm just going to call it door num. I could say door number or something longer here, but computer scientists like to be short and chop off letters and all that stuff. So door num. What is door num? Effectively, door num, and you'll see more examples of this as we go, is a variable. And variables are just like a box inside the computer. It's a box with the label door num written on it. And inside door num will be placed the value 1, 2, or 3. And then anytime you see door num in this function, the computer will go look for a box named door num, look inside the box and find the value, in this case 1, 2, or 3, and replace door num with that 1, 2, or 3. So that basically it's a placeholder. It just says, go find me the value of door num right now, and I will use that value instead of the word door num itself. Let's see this in action. I'm going to use something called console.log to show this off to start with. So console.log is just useful for when you want to fix bugs in your program or just see the values of some of your variables without doing too much. I'm going to say console log and some parentheses like usual, and then quote door, and then a comma here, and then door num, semicolon. Now, this function runs anytime I click this button, and if I click this button, you'll notice nothing happened. Where did that just go? What did that even just do? And the answer is we have to look inside the console down here. So in the bottom left-hand corner, if we click console, it actually put door 2 right there. And if I click 3, it says door 3. Notice door num here is being just acting as a placeholder. This value is what we're actually seeing. When choosEnitialDoor runs, if door num is 3, then it sees door num, goes and looks for that box, like I said, and just replaces it with the value 3. And that's why we see door 3 here. So this gives us what we want. We wanted to change this text from a 1 to a 3 or whatever, button they click. So we just want to change this value to door num now, and the computer will fill in the right value for us. Now, how do we do that? And the answer is with another HTML tag. That tag is the span tag. Span is a lot like div, except it does not begin a new block. So let's see this in action. If we scroll down here in our HTML, you'll see where we say you've initially chosen door 1. If we put a span tag around the number 1, you will actually see no difference at all. When I click the number 3, you'll see you've initially chosen door 1. You don't see any kind of extra spacing around it or anything. Had I said div here, I delete span and say div, then you would notice a very big difference, right? There's a border around one. It's now like a new line, both before and after. It's a block. So span is very useful when you want to tag around something that you want to change in HTML without breaking the flow of the text. So I'm going to change this back to span. And actually, you'll see it kindly, since I did it quick enough, changed my end tag for me back to span. You might have to do that depending on how exactly you change the front tag, but just make sure these match, span and close span. And now we want to give this an ID, just like we did our div tags. Giving it an ID allows us to grab this span tag from code easily. So I'm going to say ID equals initial door. Notice this is just like div ID equals step 2. I've now given an ID to the span tag. And as you might be able to guess, down here, I can get that with document.getElement by ID. So document.getElement by ID, initial door. Now, I don't want to set the style of this thing, right? What I really want to do is just set the text inside the span tag to something else. So let's say dot inner text. That is how we actually reference the text inside any tag. So dot inner text equals, and what do we want to set it equal to? Well, if I set it equal to the number 4, and we can close this console now, we don't really need it anymore. You'll notice if I'm not fast enough typing, it starts saying there's errors because I haven't finished my statement. That's just noise right now to us. So I close the console by clicking it again. So inner text equals 4. What if I just did that? If I click on 3 here, you'll notice it says you've initially chosen door 4. It correctly updated the text inside the span tag to what I said. But I don't want it obviously to be 4. I want it to be whatever door num has inside of it. Remember from up here, door num will have 1 if I clicked 1, 2 if I clicked 2, and 3 if I clicked 3. So let's just delete the number 4 and type door num. Now, when I click 2, you've initially chosen door 2. If I click 3, you'll notice you've initially chosen door 3. You'll also notice that I can click these buttons right now, and they actually keep changing the door number. We're not going to want that in the end. We're going to fix that in a moment. But for now, it's actually kind of useful just to see that this really is working, right? We're clicking the various numbers, and we can change the initially chosen door in our text using a span tag. Now, you might want to call out the values that are actually changing just to make them stand out to the person playing your game so they can kind of quickly see what's going on. You don't have to do this, but I find it kind of nice. In CSS, I'm going to go down here and style all of my span tags. So again, this is span, just writing on a new line, curly braces. And I'm going to make the font weight bold. That's how you write it in CSS, font-weight, bold. And you'll notice this 3 just became bold because it's, that's inside of a span tag right in here. And so all of those are going to be bold now. And I'll make the color blue just to make it stand out even a bit more. And so now you can actually see that this is a value that changes. Again, it just highlights it that this is what you want the person reading this to focus on. You don't have to do this. It can actually look a bit more natural if you don't in certain cases. But for now, just so it pops out, I'm gonna use this style. Okay, one more thing here. We don't actually need this console.log anymore. Let's get rid of that. That's really just if I was looking at the console. I'm going to delete that though, and the game is going to work just fine because I'm setting the inner text of initial door to door num already. So when I click 2, it says 2, 3, 1, etc. Now, I can do one more replacement already, right? Do you want to keep door 1? This should match. If I've initially chosen door 2, I am going to keep door 2 if I press the keep button. So let's do that replacement too. Goes exactly the same. Final chance, do you want to keep door 1? I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to put another span tag around this. And remember that IDs have to be unique. It might be tempting here to say ID equals initial door, but that would make 2 span tags with the same ID. Any tag, it doesn't have to be a span tag, cannot have the same ID. That you just cannot have two tags of any kind with the same ID. So I'm going to give this a different ID. I'm going to say ID equals keep door. Seems reasonable enough. And then down here in code, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. Down here, I initially grabbed the element with ID initial door and said it's inner text to door num. I'm just going to do the same thing with keep door, right? Document dot get element by ID. Parentheses, quotes, keep door. And then I want to again set the text inside this tag because this has grabbed the span tag in its entirety. So I say dot inner text. And then it's just setting it to the exact same number as before, door num. And so with that, you'll notice if I click door number 2, it says you've initially chosen door 2. I'm now revealing a go behind door 3. We haven't fixed that one yet, but it says final chance, do you want to keep door 2? This is actually updating both values now when I click a door number. And again, I don't want somebody to be able to keep changing their mind here. We're going to fix that in a moment. But notice we've actually set 2 of these 4 values that we have to change in the second step. So let's stop them from changing their mind. And we're going to do that by disabling the buttons once they've been clicked. One easy way to do that is just to set the disabled property on that button. So we're going to add an ID to button 1 just to show how this works. ID equals button 1. That'll let me grab the button from code. And then down here in my choose initial door, when they've clicked a button, I'm going to say document.get element by ID button 1. So that has grabbed me the button, and now I want to set the disabled property on this button. Now I'm going to set it to true. Notice true does not have quotes around it. These are special values called Booleans. You have true and false. Most programming languages have 2 special values like this. They're used when you want to set something logically true, logically false. So I'm saying disabled should be true. I want this thing disabled. And that's how you say this in JavaScript. So now when I click a button, notice button 1 doesn't work anymore. I've disabled it. I'm hitting button 2 and 3. They still work because I didn't disable them yet. Button 1 does nothing. Unfortunately, when I click restart game, I didn't actually re-enable the button, right? So I need to go into my restart game and do very similarly document.get element by ID button 1. And that's just like you see above here. And then disabled again, but I'm going to set disabled to be false. It's a weird double negative, right? But do you want this thing disabled? False. I do not want it disabled. So it'll be re-enabled. And there you go. You can see that that indeed worked. So now when I click 2, at least this button is disabled. And when I click restart, the button is re-enabled and I can click it again. And as you can imagine, I could just add ID equals button 2, ID equals button 3, disable and enable them down here, and everything would work. However, that's a little bit annoying, especially if we had more buttons. And so this is a good time to learn about CSS combinators. And I will show an example of one right here. If I write hashtag step1 space, not a comma, button, and then say color green, let's see what happens. Notice here that the buttons have become green inside step 1, but not in step 2, and not the restart game button either. If I put a comma here, that would just say everything inside step 1 and also everything inside, every button tag is going to be green. So let's see what that looks like. There you go. All of step 1 is green and also all buttons are green. But without the comma, this says find everything that is step 1 and then all buttons inside step 1 are selected. And so that only colors these 3 things green. Now, what I'd like to say, rather than making all the buttons green, is for every one of the step 1 buttons, please disable it. That would be nice, especially if there were 10 buttons. To do that, we need to learn about something new called a for loop. A for loop lets us run a block of code multiple times, once for every object or once for every thing. So in this case, we want to write one block of code, which is just going to have one line that disables the button. And then we want the computer to go through each of the 3 buttons and run that line of code, disable, disable, disable. So that's what we're going to do. But let me show an easier example of a for loop first, and then we'll run the version that disables things. So scroll up here into choose initial door, and let's just write some test code for a moment. I'm going to insert a new line, and this is called a for loop. We say for, and then some parentheses, and then let some variable name, I'm going to say item for now, and then weirdly the word of. This is just the syntax of a for loop. We'll describe this in a bit. So let item of hello. That is very broken English, but we're going to go with it for now. And then curly braces, as you've probably gotten used to. This is, inside the curly braces, the code we're going to run over and over again. I'm going to do console.log again, just to show what's going on. Parentheses, and then let's say, let's print letter, comma, and then item. Item, notice, is the variable that I have created here. And this for loop says let item be each of the things from here. Now, when I give this just some text in quotes, this is called a string, it's going to actually give me each letter one by one. And if we say, give me all the step 1 buttons, it's going to give me each button one by one. So if this is giving me one letter, in this case, one by one, then I expect to see letter H, right? The first letter, if it's giving them to me one by one, it'll give me the letter H. And so this will print letter H. And then it will run my code again, this time with item equal to E. So it'll print letter E. And then it'll run my code again, this time with the first L in item. Letter L. Second time, the fourth time around is going to run with the second letter L, item L, and then the last time, the O. So this is going to actually run the code inside the curly braces 5 times, one by one, letter by letter. So let's actually run this and see what happens. Since this is in my choose initial door function, all I have to do is click a button. I'm going to open my console so I can actually see what's going on here, and I'll clear this. And I'm going to click the button 3, and there you go. You can see letter H, letter E, letter L, letter L, letter O. It's breaking it up one by one and running my code each time, once for every object in there. So again, for loops, a little bit of a weird syntax, but the idea is for, and you say let item, like create me a new variable called item, and let item be each and every one of the elements from here. In this case, hello. Each of the letters out of hello. So what I really want to do is go through step 1 buttons, not the letters of hello. So I'm going to replace the string down here, hello, with, and again, string is just text with quotes around it in JavaScript and most languages. I'm going to replace this with a new document command. Document dot query selector all, and parentheses as usual. Query selector all uses the syntax that you can use in CSS to select specific groups of things. So if I want all the step 1 buttons, I do the same thing I did in CSS. I put quotes here, and then hashtag step 1 space button. Now if I run this, well, it's already running, but if I click the button 3 so that it'll choose initial door, or 2 or 1, whichever button I want to click here, notice now it goes through 3 different buttons. There's button 1, there's button 2, and there's button 3. Query selector all has said, okay, find me all the step 1 buttons, And you can give it a string just like that. And it will go through and run your code once for each button it finds. If there were 10 buttons in step one, it would run your code 10 times. In this case, our code is console.log. That's not actually what we want to keep, right? We want to actually disable each of these buttons. So rather than console.logging each button to the screen down here, I'm going to replace this line with item.disable equals true. And I can close the console now. I don't need that anymore. And so now when I press button 3, notice all the buttons are disabled. And they're still colored green because I have this CSS thing here. I'm going to remove that just so it's a little more clear that they are disabled. And so you can see now that it actually disabled all 3 buttons in one shot. And I don't even need this ID anymore or this disabled true part here. It's actually going through each one of the buttons. So again, for loop, let item be each element out of all the step 1 buttons. And so the first step 1 button gets put into the variable item, and then we run the code. Item.disabled equals true. Then we go back and the second step 1 button gets placed into item, and then it runs our code. And that gets disabled, set to true. And then finally it returns the third button. Item is now set to that third button. We say item.disabled, so it disables the third button, and it finishes and keeps running code after that. There is none at this moment, so it just finishes. So that's the handiness of a for loop. So I'm going to get rid of this button 1 disabled. We don't need it anymore. This for loop is doing all 3 buttons for us in one shot. We don't even need an ID anymore, right, for our button. That's handy because we selected it by virtue of saying all buttons in step 1 get selected one by one in this for loop. And you'll notice the last thing is down here in our restart game, we had originally said button 1 disabled equals false, right, to re-enable them. Well, we should probably have a similar for loop down here in restart game that re-enables all 3 buttons. So I am going to get rid of this line and type this for loop again. I'll make this a little bigger so you can see that I'm really just copying the previous for loop, right? For parentheses, let item be each of the things from document.query selector all parentheses quotes hashtag step 1 button. So that says, okay, let item be each of the things out of the step 1 buttons, curly braces to give it the code that I'm going to run. And this time, instead of item.disabled equals true, I say item.disabled equals false. I want to re-enable all of the buttons. And so with that, we can click a button and all 3 of the buttons are suddenly disabled. And if I click restart game, all 3 of the buttons are suddenly re-enabled, just as we wanted. So now no one can cheat by clicking different buttons and changing their mind. And that's pretty much what we wanted. Now we also want to do this with the keep and switch buttons too, right? If they click keep and I'm like, never mind, I want to switch, I want the car. We don't want them to do that either. So let's do the same thing for choosing the final door. In choose final door, I just want to disable the buttons. Remember, if we scroll down here, when you click either keep or switch, choose final door is the function that is called. And so I'm going to go down in here and write another for loop that disables those buttons. So this is probably, hopefully becoming a little bit routine. For parentheses, let item be out of document.query selector all parentheses quotes. And now we're going to do step 2 button, right? Step 2 space button. And the code I want to run is just item.disabled equals true. I want to disable each of the buttons. So now when I click on 3, those buttons are disabled. When I click on switch, these buttons are disabled. Now, of course, you'll notice if I hit restart and then select something else again, the buttons are still disabled, which is a problem. So I, again, need to re-enable them in my restart game. Now I could write another for loop down here that says, step 2 button item dot disabled equals true or false to re-enable the buttons. But there's an even easier way to do that. Remember the comma in CSS allows us to say, do it for this and also for all these too. It's like a list of things, just do this for all of them. So I can actually write comma step 2 button down here. This says go through all of the step 1 and step 2 buttons and set all of the disableds to false in one shot. So this will actually go through 5 buttons. The 1, 2, and 3 button, as well as the keep and switch button. Because I put a comma in there, it basically just takes 3 items, joins it to the other 2 items, 5, and then runs this one line of code, dot disabled equals false, on all 5 of the buttons in a row. So when I click restart, oops, actually I'll show it better. So notice these are disabled. I click restart, and the buttons are re-enabled, and everything works as hoped. So now our buttons are disabled as they should be, and we really just need to replace these 4 values. Where which door the goat is revealed from, which door to switch to, which door we're opening, and what we want. So I'm actually going to go back and add some more span tags just to kind of set this up so that we can control these from code, and then we're going to write the code to finish the game. So I'm now revealing a goat behind door 3. You can see here on the left. I'm going to put a span tag around that. I need to replace that one. And I'm going to call the ID for this one reveal goat door. You can, these names are arbitrary. I'm just making up names that make sense to me. Down here, do you want to keep door, your keep door or switch to door? Well, this is going to be the door that I'm switching to, so I'll call this ID equals switch door. And that's it for step 2. There's only 4 things to replace in there. And then down here in step 3, there's 2 things I need to replace. Which door did I just open? So span ID equals opening door. Close the span tag. And it has it could be either a car or a goat. So span ID equals, let's call this winnings. This is what I want. And then close span tag. So you'll notice only the font and color have changed now. These are all highlighted because they're things I can replace. I put span tags around them. But they're not controlled from code yet. So let's do that now. These 2 I want to set somewhere inside the initial door. Like after I choose the initial door, they should be set immediately to something. So I'm going to go in JavaScript down here and in choose initial door. In addition to setting the inner text here, we're going to say document.get element by ID. And we're going to say reveal goat door dot inner text equals question marks for now. I'm putting these in quotes so that it just sets those to the exact text of question marks. And same thing with document.get element by ID. And then we had reveal goat door, we need switch door now. So I'll set that one to some question marks too. Switch door dot inner text equals question marks. So you'll notice this is just the exact same thing we did before with initial door and keep door. We're just now setting reveal goat door and switch door from code as well. So if I click any one of these buttons, you'll notice these have now become question marks. We'll fill these in with the proper values momentarily. And if I click on keep or switch, then naturally these should be set from code as well. I'm going to go do that down and choose final door. We're going to say document.get element by ID. And if we scroll down, remember we called it opening door and winnings. So this is doing a lot of the same thing over and over again, right? Opening door, in quotes, dot inner text. Again, we're setting the text inside of the opening door span tag, which here I have written as 1, but we're going to set it to a bunch of question marks for the moment. And same thing with our winnings. Document.get element by ID. Might be bored of typing that by now. Winnings in quotes dot inner text equals question mark. And so all we've done so far is just prove from code. We've added our span placeholder tags, and we've proved from code that we can set this to anything we want to. And same with these. These are now question marks because we've set them from inside code. So all we have to do now is figure out the right values to set them to. Now we come to the point where we need the computer to have actually chosen a car door, right? It can't reveal a goat behind this door and know it's not a car unless it knows which door the car is actually behind. And it has to choose that door randomly. But how do we have the computer choose a random door 1 through 3 that the car is going to be behind? Well, to start with, we should probably make a variable. Again, that's a box with a label that we're going to shove a value inside. We should probably make a variable to hold which car door the program has selected. I'm going to do that outside of all of my functions. So if I go up to the top and press enter twice, just give myself a little bit of room here, and say let car door equals 0. Of course, 0 is an invalid door, but initializing to 0 if you don't have another value to initialize to is considered good practice in a lot of languages, so I'll do it here. This is setting up a car door variable, and by doing so outside of all my functions, it allows any of my functions to know what the car door is. This will be handy later. We're just going to define it, is what this is called, outside of all the functions to make it a global variable. It's available to all functions. I am now going to make a new function called setup. Function setup is going to set up our game. And again, I have no inputs to this thing, and I have curly braces that define the code of function setup. And right now, we're just going to assign car door a value. Car door equals, and here's where randomness comes in, math, capital M, dot random, semicolon. Now, let's see what this actually did. So I'm going to make one more line here, console.log, and I'll say car door in quotes, and then comma, car door, my variable. And I am going to have to call this function from somewhere, right? Where do I want to randomly pick a new car door? Well, I certainly want it to happen when I restart the game. So down here in restart game, I should probably say, please set up the game again, like pick another car door. But I also want to do this on the very first shot before the user has ever clicked restart game, right? So just as I called this in restart game, I just want to call it right when the program first loads too. And to do that, I will also just call setup down here at the bottom of my code. So when my code is first run, right when the page loads, it'll call setup and create a random car for me. Now, I'm going to open the console and let's see what this math.random did. Okay, well, let's clear this and try it again. Okay, car door 0.343. Oh, goodness, that is not what we want, right? Yes. Unfortunately, math.random gives us a random number between 0 and 1. It will never give us 1, could give us 0. It could give us 0.999999, some crazy amount of nines. But it will never give us 1, but that is it. It gives us a random number between 0 and 1, not including 1. How do we get a random whole number between 1 and 3 out of that? Well, in 3 steps. The first is to notice that if we multiply math.random by 3, the range goes from 0 to almost 1 to 0 to almost 3. So I'll show that. And in JavaScript and in most programming languages, multiplication is written with an asterisk, not an x. X is considered a variable. So we say asterisk 3 means times 3. And I'll clear this again. I'll click restart game, and I can just keep clicking restart game and notice the values. I'm getting things anywhere between 0, 1, 2 point something. It will never give me exactly 3, but it could give me 2.9999, whatever. So I actually do have 3 values now, right? A 0, a 1, or a 2 in the front, and a bunch of decimals I couldn't care less about at the back. So now the second step is we use one more function, again from math. We say math.floor. Math.floor is a lot like asking what floor of a building you're on. I don't care if you're standing on a desk. I don't care if you're like sitting towards the top of the ceiling. Floor just says round down. I don't care how high you are. Like you're still on floor 9, even if you're on like the very tippy top of floor 9, like hugging the ceiling. And that's what math.floor does. It just ditches the decimal point completely. It does not round up or down. It just always goes down. And you'll see that's indeed what's happening. Car door 2 is listed here, and you can again ignore this error. That's just because it started running my code while I wasn't done typing. So if I keep clicking restart game, you'll note, well, I'm getting a lot of 2s there. Some 1s, should get a 0. There we go, we got a 0. So I'm getting 0s, 1s, or 2s. So close, I'm only 1 off. Well, why not just add 1 to that number, right? Instead of 0, 1, and 2, I'll get 1, 2, and 3. And indeed, that finishes it off. If we add 1 on the very end of this, and I will clear this now, and just start hitting restart game, because remember, restart game runs the setup function, you'll see I'm getting random doors, 1, 2, or 3. So now that we have a car door, we can remove this console.log and close the console. I'm just going to click this. Now that the computer has chosen a car door, we have the information we need to fill in which door we're going to reveal that has the goat behind it. So when I click door 3 here, and we think through, well, okay, how are we going to pick which door which goat door we want to reveal? Well, it needs to be a door that's not the one the contestant chose, and it also needs to be not the car door. So I need something that will tell me both the door unequal to the one the person chose and the car door. And so I'm going to write a function that will figure out which door is unequal to 2 other doors, the car door and the user chosen door. So I'm going to come down here and write that function. Function get door unequal to door 1 and door 2. It takes 2 doors, right? It's going to take the car door and the user chosen door. However, I'm making this generic. I'm just saying this function will take any 2 door numbers, door 1 or 2. And door 1 or 2 here are just variable names. That doesn't mean door 1 has to have the number 1 in it. It could have the number 3 in it. And door 2 might also have the number 3 in it, if the car door and the user chosen door happen to both be 3. But what we want this function to do is just give us back a number. Tell us which door number we should reveal that has the goat behind it. Now, for the moment, I'm going to return something completely invalid from this function. And this is where we learn about return statements. Functions can do more than just take inputs and take actions. They can also return a value, and that's done with the return statement. So if I say return 4 here, when this function is called, it runs through one line of code which just says, give the person who called me back the number 4. Let's see how we use that. So I'm going to scroll down here and go to this reveal goat door .inner text part. I'm going to give myself a little space here and make a new variable called reveal goat door. And set that equal to calling the function getDoor unequal to with 2 doors. The door number the user chose, door num, right? Remember, when you click the button up here and choose initial door, door num will be 1, 2, or 3, and that is the initial door that you're picking. So we want to get a door the user did not choose. We want something unequal to door num, but we also want something unequal to car door. Remember, car door is our variable up here that has been set here in setup to a random car door, 1, 2, or 3. So what we're saying is create me a new variable named reveal goat door. The let is just JavaScript way of saying let this be a new variable, and make it equal to get door unequal to with these two door numbers. So JavaScript, when it runs this line right here, it says, okay, I'm going to run the get door unequal to function with these two door numbers. Door num's value gets placed into door 1. Car door's value gets placed into door 2, but we don't use any of them yet. We just say, return 4. The 4 comes down here and takes the entire place of this function. And so what we in the end have is let reveal goat door equal 4. So once we fill this function in with the right values, it'll get the right door number, 1, 2, or 3. But for now, I'm putting a completely invalid value just to show how this works. And then we need to use this variable. Well, let's just replace our question marks with reveal goat door, right? The name of the variable. I really can't spell today. And so whatever this function returns gets stored in the reveal goat door variable. And then that variable gets set into the inner text of the reveal goat door ID, which is for this span tag right here. So this is a number of moving pieces, right? Function returns 4, 4 goes into variable, variable goes into the inner text of this span tag. But it all chains together nicely. So you'll notice now that when we click the button 3, we actually see I'm revealing a goat behind door 4. It took the return value, placed it in the variable, and then placed it in the inner text of the span. So now all we have to do is return the right number up here, and we'll have filled in our goat door correctly. So how do we fill in the get door unequal to function correctly? This is where we learned about something called an if statement. So there are a number of ways you can do this. I'm going to show you one of them, but you can actually do this in quite a few ways. There are some more elegant than others. I'm going to add a line here that says if, and this is called an if statement or conditional. This is how I make decisions in my program. If door 1, and I have to put this in parentheses, is not equal to door 2. This is going to be weird, but in programming languages, not equal is usually written as exclamation equal. It's something you have to get used to. They didn't have like a not equal button that has the slash through the equals button, so they chose exclamation equals. So this says if door 1 is not equal to door 2, then do something. All right, what do I do? Well, if door 1 is not equal to door 2, there's only one possibility, right? If the user chose one door and the car door is a different door, if the two numbers are unequal, then there's one remaining door that I have to return. That's the only goat door I can reveal. And here's where we can get a bit sneaky. If you notice that if you add all the door numbers together, 1 plus 2 plus 3, you get the number 6. And so imagine subtracting door 1 and door 2 from both sides of this equation. Let's say door 1 is 3 and door 2 is 2. So if I subtracted 3 and 2 from this side of the equation, I would subtract 5 and be left with only 1 on both sides, right? That's the door I want. The idea is that no matter what door 1 and door 2 are equal to, as long as they are different and I subtract them from the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3, I'm left with the other door automatically. This becomes a math question. I can simply subtract door 1 and door 2 from 6, and I'll automatically be left with the other door number that I actually want. So that's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to return 6 minus door 1 minus door 2 in this case. If door 1 was 1 and door 2 was 2, I would subtract 1 and 2 from 6 and get 3. If door 1 was 1 and door 2 was 3, I would subtract 1 and 3 from 6 and get 2. It's always going to give me the other one. Now, that doesn't help me for the case of door 1 equals door 2. So for that case, I'm going to need some more if statements. One thing worth noting about the return statement is that if you ever see a return statement, your function stops right there and does not keep going. So this is kind of a special statement. If door 1 is not equal to door 2, and we return 6 minus door 1 minus door 2, it never continues down to any other lines of code. This is actually quite useful because what this means is after this curly brace, the only possibility is that door 1 equals door 2. And so now we have to randomly pick between two doors. Now, this is getting complicated enough that I'm going to show you one more thing that can help keep it straight, and that's the comment in JavaScript. A single line comment starts with a double forward slash. And this is just notes to yourself so you can remember what you're doing. So here I'm going to say, otherwise, door 1 equals door 2. Sorry. So we need to randomly choose remaining door. That's the task left to us if we're running down here after that first if statement. And up here, I might want to actually explain to myself what in the world I was doing with 6 minus door 1 minus door 2. That's weird. So again, I could say double slash, only one door is left to choose. And since 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, subtracting, and I'm going to start another comment here so this doesn't get too long. Door 1 and door 2 from 6 gives the remaining door number. The computer will completely ignore anything starting with a forward slash and up through the end of the line. These are notes for myself. This helps me remember what I was up to so that when I come back to the code later, I'm not scratching my head wondering what I was thinking at that time. It also helps other people who might read your code figure out what you were up to as well. So now there's 3 possibilities to finish off my function. If door 1 equals door 2, that's the only possibility left if we haven't already returned out of the function early with the right answer. Then either door 1 is 1, 2, or 3. So I'm going to remove this return statement and just write if statements for this. If door 1 equals 1, and in programming languages, when you're comparing if two numbers are equal to each other, you write a double equals sign. JavaScript also has a triple equals sign, but for right now, just remember not to use the single equals sign. Single equals is used when you want to do assignment, when you want to change the value of a variable. So door 1 single equals 1 is saying, let's set door 1 equal to the number 1. If I want to compare it in an if statement, let's use the double equals. That's the right way to do it. So that takes a little bit of getting used to, but that's how programming languages typically work. So if door 1 is equal to the number 1, then really there's 2 possibilities, right? 2 and 3. Those are my other 2 doors. Now, I need to put these somewhere. So let's make 2 variables to hold the other possible doors. So I'm going to come up here and say, let other door 1 equals 0 for the moment. Notice a single equals because I'm assigning. Let other door 2 equals 0 as well. Those are invalid door numbers, but I'm going to fill them in down here. And now I can say, okay, sure. If door 1 was 1, and that means door 2 is also 1, by the way, then the other 2 doors are 2 and 3. So I'm just going to say other door 1 equals 2, and other door 2 equals 3. So at least I know what the 2 other doors are that I'm picking between when I go to reveal my code door. Now, as you can imagine, I can write 2 more if statements for the other 2 cases. What if door 1 was 2? What if door 1 was 3? Those are the other two possibilities, and I need to handle them as well. So if door 1 equals 2, then the two possibilities are either 1 or 3, right? That's the other two doors that are not equal to 2. So other door 1 equals 1, and other door 2 equals 3. Not so shabby. And last case, if door 1 equals 3. I'm just covering all three possible cases. Other door 1 equals 1, and other door 2 equals 2, right? If the door I need to stay away from is door number 3, I have to choose between door 1 and 2. Now, all of that being said and done, we need to choose one of those two doors to return, and we need to do so randomly. So guess what? We're going to use math.random again. Now, remember that math.random returns a number between 0 and 1. Never actually 1 directly, which is fine. But if we want a 50-50 chance of doing one thing or the other, what we really want to say is, if math.random is less than 0.5, do one thing. If it's not, do another thing, right? There's a 50% chance it's below 0.5, and there's a 50% chance it's above 0.5 or equal to 0.5. So that's how we'll write our final if statement to choose a door to return. If math.random is less than 0.5, it's kind of like a coin flip here, then return other door 1. Let's just pick that one. If the coin flip comes out below 0.5, kind of like the heads. And then otherwise, let's return other door 2. Now, how do you say otherwise here? Well, thankfully, if statements also have something called an else part of that statement. You can always write after the final curly brace else and some more curly braces and do the thing that happens if you didn't do the first thing. So return other door 2. This is handy. It basically takes math.random and says, was it before 0.5? Return other door 1. Otherwise, else, return other door 2. Either way, it's going to return something, but it is going to randomly choose between those two other doors. Now, I will mention that this code will work right as written, but you may be wondering, well, can't I have used else up above here? Maybe you weren't wondering, but in case you were, the answer is yes. Here, this is slightly wasteful. It's not a big deal, but saying if door 1 equals 1, do this, and then saying if door 1 equals 2, do this. What if door 1 was 1? It does these two, and it comes to the next statement. There's no way door 1 can be equal to 2. But the computer will still, dutifully check if it's 2, even though there's no possible way since it was already 1. Computer programmers usually put an else in here to make sure that as soon as the computer finds the right statement, it'll just skip the rest of the conditions and not bother checking them because they're not possible. So in this case, I could write else and then follow it with an if statement. So I'm just going to delete the new line there and then do the same thing here. Else, if this. This is called an if-else-if chain. And the idea is that the computer will run, this one first. It'll say, does door 1 equal 1? If so, it'll do whatever code is inside there and then jump to the very end of the if-else-if chain. It will ignore the rest of the conditions. This is useful when the conditions really can never happen at the same time. If they could, you probably do not want an else-if chain. But in this case, door 1 can never be equal to 1, 2, and 3 at the same time, or any combination of them at the same time. So there's even one more optimization, which is if I know that door 1 can only be 1, 2, or 3, I could remove this final case and just say else. Door 1 is either 1, or it's 2, or otherwise I know it's 3, just do this other thing, we're done. This could be bad if you didn't know it was either 1, 2, or 3, but in this case we do, and so we can get away with it. As I said, all of these changes don't change how the code functions except to make it slightly more efficient, but we don't really care about speed that much here. But it is normal practice to write it in this way. In the same way, you will sometimes see programmers not write an else case when you're doing a return. Just like we did up here when we said, well, this is returning, so the only other possibility is that door1 equals door2, and we didn't write an else case here because if door1 was not equal to door2, we returned and no other code is run. In the same way down here, this is equivalent to removing the else statement because we've returned other door1. We're not going to continue with other code. So we could actually delete this and just say, if math.random is less than 0.5, we return other door1. The only possibility, if we actually get to the next line of code, is that math.random was greater than or equal to 0.5, in which case we return other door2. So you will see programmers do both of these. And I just wanted to make sure you were aware that that is what's going on here. This is functionally the same and unlikely to even be faster. It's just a little bit less lines of code, or I should say maybe one less line of code. It's an extra line for the end curly brace. Now, let's actually see this work, right? So if I click 3, I'm now revealing the goat behind door 1. Okay, it didn't pick my door. That's useful. I can pick a few more doors, and you'll see that it's always dodging the door I chose. Now, we can't see the car door right now, but if we could, so let's actually log the car door down here in initial car door again. Console.log car door. So the string car door is what I'm going to see just so I can make sure I know what I'm looking at. I don't just see a random number, but then car door is the variable that has the number in it, 1, 2, or 3. And let's open my console back up and clear all the errors out. And then press 2. The car door is 1, we chose 2, and therefore we revealed goat door 3. Let me try again. 3, this time I got the car door was also 3. It randomly chose door 1. Had that happened again, it may choose door 2 based on our random selection. So we've now actually successfully filled in revealing the goat door behind door 1 or 2 or 3. And now we just have to figure out which door to switch to. How do I figure out which door I'm switching to? Well, we need to pick a door that is not the door the user chose, nor the door we revealed the goat behind, right? It needs to be the third door. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? We need to pick a door that is not equal to 2 other doors. That is our get door unequal to function one more time, but with door num and reveal goat door, not car door. The switch door is whichever door we didn't reveal and whichever door the user didn't choose. Now, those always will be different, but we can still reuse the same function anyway. So I'm going to go down here and add a line that says let switch door equal and call my function again. Get door unequal to the door that the user chose, and also my reveal goat door, right, that I just picked. And then we just set this span tag with the switch door ID to be equal to the switch door that we just figured out from that function. And let's see that in action. I click, let's say, door 2. It says, I've revealed a goat behind door 3. Do you want to keep door 2 or switch to door 1? It worked. And indeed, if you try a few more times, you'll notice it is indeed behaving correctly and always giving you a door that is unequal to your door and the door that the goat was revealed behind. So now it's a bit of confession time. When I first wrote this, I didn't think of the function get door unequal to. I only noticed that these two things, getting the goat door to reveal and switching door, happened to be basically the same operation after I had written 2 separate functions. And that's totally okay. That's normal when you're programming to write things separately and then realize, I think I just kind of did the same thing twice. I wonder if I can do it just once and then use it in both places. This is called reuse, and it can be quite useful in certain cases. So I showed it to you that way originally, but don't assume that I came up with that to begin with. And it's totally okay when you're writing programs to actually write separate functions for each operation and then realize it later and combine them. Now, I'm going to remove my console.log here so that we aren't showing the car door anymore. And we can then close the console as well so that we don't actually need to see what the car door is as we finish our game off. So now we really just need to do the same kind of thing to choose final door rather than just choose initial door. We finished choose initial door, our function here. It fills in all these values for us. But when we hit keep or switch, it doesn't actually listen to us yet. So we need to do the same kind of passing an input from our keep and our switch buttons. Right now, they both call choose final door, but without any input. We want to pass the value keep for the keep button and switch for the switch button. You have to do this in some kind of quotes, but you can't do it in double quotes because the computer, if I did keep right here, would see this as one string, and then it would see the word keep there and then see another string here, basically. It's always looking for a beginning quote and an end quote. So instead of double quotes, we have to use single quotes. In this case, the easiest thing to do. And that allows us to pass in a string of letters, KEEP, that JavaScript won't try to interpret as a variable name. If we put no quotes, JavaScript will go look for a box with the name keep on it and go look for a value, and there is none, and it will get confused. However, we can pass in the string or the letters keep or switch, and that will tell us which door we want to choose. So now if I press the keep button, it'll pass in the string keep. If I pass in the switch button, it'll pass in the word switch in quotes. And I'm going to call this, remember I have to have a variable on the other side in the function itself to receive this value. I'm going to call this choice here. And just so we can see it, I'm going to do a console.log choice, comma, and then the variable choice, semicolon. And I'm going to reopen my console now and clear this. And let's click on door 3, and they say, oh, okay, I'm revealing a goat behind door 2. I'm going to click keep. Notice when I click keep, it actually sent keep into choice. And so now I can use an if statement to decide what I want to do. If choice is keep, do one thing. If choice is switch, I can do another. So that's the basic logic there. Now, we almost have everything we need to fill in which door we're actually going to open. If you scroll up here, you'll notice that if I press keep, then I just want whatever door num was. And if I press switch, I just want whatever switch door is. The problem is door num and switch door are both in a different function, and they're not accessible from this other function unless they're global variables. So what I'm going to do is actually make 2 more global variables outside of any function. So if I scroll all the way to the top, I like to put global variables at the top to indicate they're visible to the whole file. And I'm going to say let switch door equals 0 and let keep door equals 0. So I want to track both of these. And now I'm going to scroll down. And instead of saying let switch door, which is like, please let this new variable be equal to this thing, I'm actually going to get rid of the word let. This now, switch door now refers to the switch door up here. I've created the variable up here, and now I assign it a value down here. And that value is accessible from another function. Similarly, I'm going to say keep door equals doorknob. I'm basically taking the variable that's in this function and assigning it into keep door, a global variable up here. Now, if I scroll all the way down here, I can write an if statement to figure out which door I'm opening. I'm going to say let opening door equals 0, and then say an if statement that determines what opening door really is. It's not 0, of course. So if parentheses choice equals keep. So I'm saying if the person told me to keep their door, then make sure opening door, I have my curly braces here, opening door equals keep door. So, whoops, let me spell that right. If their choice was keep, just grab the value out of this global variable, which we set up in choose initial door. We kind of save both of them, right? We say, okay, make sure that the whole program is aware of the switch door if we decide to switch, and also the keep door if we decide to keep. And now use that information down here. If choice equals keep, opening door equals keep door. Else, and you could say if choice equals switch, curly braces, opening door equals switch door. So this has looked at our button value, keep or switch, and said, you know what? Just grab whichever door the person told me to and put it in the variable opening door. Now, just like last time, you'll notice that since choice can really only be one of two things, it's perfectly fine if you get rid of this if choice equals switch part and just have else. It's the only other possibility. If there were more possibilities, we'd have to keep it, but it's totally fine to have else here. And now we simply get rid of these question marks and say, you know what? Opening door is just whatever we determined. It's either keep door or switch door, depending on what they pressed. So let's see that in action. Press 3. If I press keep, I keep door 3, just like I had said to. And if I press 3, but I press switch, it should switch to door 2. And indeed, it does. And notice now the last thing that we have to do before the game is complete. We have to figure out whether they won a goat or a car. If I come down here and put one more variable and if statement in here, I can figure that out. Let winnings equal some, empty thing, in quotes. I don't know what they've won yet. And then just like before, I need to say, if the door we just opened is the car door, you won. And if not, you didn't. You got a goat. Although maybe, again, you want the goat. Who knows? So if, parentheses, opening door equals car door. Remember, the car door is a global variable that we defined at the top and set to a random car door. So that's already been set up. If opening door equals car door, brackets, then winnings equals car. Yay! Else, winnings equals goat. So again, we create a variable with some kind of empty value. We have an if statement that says, well, if it's this, the variable gets this value. If it's this, otherwise, we're going to give it the other value. And then we just set the inner text instead of question marks here to the value in our variable, winnings. So that'll update the winnings text. And I'm going to put some new lines around this just to kind of be like paragraphs in my code. This is kind of a section determining winnings. This is a section determining the opening door. So sometimes it can be nice to provide a little bit of white space so that when you're reading the code, you kind of know what's logically grouped together. And we don't need this console.log anymore. Usually, after you've seen the value a few times, you can delete the console.logs and not worry about them. And so let's see it work in action. I'm going to choose door 3. It says you've initially chosen door 3. They've revealed a goat behind door 2. Do we want to keep door 3 or switch to 1? I press keep. I'm opening door 3. It has a goat. Clearly the car was behind door number 1. Let's play again. I'm going to choose door 3 again. Still revealing a goat behind door 2. I'm going to switch this time. It had a car. Wait, that's suspicious. Does it actually always do that? Well, let's restart one more time and press 3. Oh, now they revealed a goat behind door 1. Do we want to keep door 3 or switch to door 2? I'm going to keep, see what happens. Drat, it had a goat. So you can see the game is changing. And of course, if I click 2, I'm revealing a goat behind door 3. Do I want to keep door 2 or switch to door 1? I'll keep it. And actually, this time, keeping it worked, and I get a car. And that's it. You have a fully functioning game. Now, while we could stop right here, and some of you are probably thinking, this is 70 minutes of my life I can't get back. But we want to add a picture, right? I mean, what good is it to tell somebody they got to go to their car? This is the web, it's the 2020s. Let's add a picture. This is done with one more HTML tag that we're going to cover right now, and that is the image tag. So down here in my HTML, I am going to add a line after my paragraph saying, yeah, I'm opening a door, it has this, that, or the other. And I'm going to type in IMG. That is how you spell image in HTML. Yes, they just deleted a few vowels. I guess we have to get used to that. And then we're going to give this an ID because we do want to control this from code. ID equals, let's say, winning image, in quotes. And let's just add the source attribute right now. What is the source of my image? And this is src. And this is where we tell it where to go look for the actual picture. Now I say src equals quotes, but where do I get this link to an image from the web? And one of the places you can get a link pretty easily is down here in the assets button next to console. I click here, and you'll notice these various different options. I can click on photos, and I can search for things from a website called Unsplash, like, for instance, a goat or a car or things like that. So I'm going to choose here, I don't know, that's a pretty good car to win. I'll go for that one. I'm just going to click whichever car I want. You can click a completely different one. And you can say see more and just keep going if you don't like some of the options that you're given. I'm going to click this. And notice it says copied Unsplash photo URL to clipboard. Fine. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to just paste into the middle of the quotes. You don't want to get on one side of the quotes or the other. Get in the middle of them. And then just paste. And notice it's this long string. Who knows what this is? But that's fine. I'm just going to close the image tag. Now, image is interesting. It has one open tag with all of the information it needs and doesn't need nor want a close tag. It's one of the few HTML tags that you do not close. So just something to remember. Image is special. It has all of its data or information to run right up in the front opening tag, and there's nothing to put in the middle of that in the closing tag. So there is no closing tag. So let's see what this actually looks like. I'm going to pick a door, hit keep, and oh my goodness, where is even the car here? Oh wow, that's a big car. Okay, so probably don't want it that big. Let's use CSS to make it smaller. Notice my ID of my image tag is winning image, so I can just come down here in CSS and say hashtag winning image to select that ID, that image only. Curly braces, and let's give it a width. Let's make this thing a bit smaller. I'm going to say 20 rem. That is so much better. Now, it's not true, right? It says I'm opening door 2, and it has a goat, and there's a picture of a car. So now we actually need to control the picture from code to make it have the right picture, of course. So how do we put the pictures in code? We're going to learn about one more thing. Scroll up to the top of your JavaScript function. All the way to the top, getting kind of long, right? And we're going to make two more global variables, but I'm going to use a different word this time called const. Const, and I'm going to put this in all caps because this is pretty standard a way of writing your variables when they're constants, when they will not change. I don't want my code changing the image. I just am saying I'm giving you some data. Leave it alone. It's a constant. Don't like it should never change. And usually they write it all caps with underscores between the words rather than the camel case that we've been writing is what they call it because of the humps. Car door, where it's like car capital D, is like, each word is capitalized on the first letter. So this is called snake case. We have a goat underscore image, and I'm going to say equals some quotes. The variable name is entirely style. It's a very common style, which is why I bring it up. But notice that it doesn't really matter. I could have said let goat image equal quotes and done goat with a capital I and no underscore between them. That would have worked just fine. All it does is allows my code to accidentally change that value, and I'm just trying to show that you can protect yourself from accidentally changing a value that you never expect to change. Okay, all that done. All I really want is to paste a goat image in here. How do I do that? Same thing, assets, photos. Let's search for a goat now. All right, I don't know. Which of these goats looks cute to you? Which of these would make you very happy if you actually had just lost a car? This one's definitely speaking to me. I'm going to go for this one. Definitely choose whichever goat you want. Notice all I do is click on it and it copies the URL, the link to the clipboard. So all I have to do is go into here in my code and paste. Not bad. What about my car image? Well, const car image equals quotes and again semicolon at the end. I'm just going to take and cut this car that I already chose right out of here and then paste it in here. I'd already picked one. You can go pick a different one if you want, of course, in the assets tab, like the goat. And all we've done here is said, okay, now our code has a link to each of the images. How do we actually show the image when they win a goat or a car? Well, you'll notice if we scroll all the way down to choose final door, we already have something that says winnings equals car or winnings equals goat. In here, I could just, also say which image I want to show too. So I'm going to say let winnings image equals open close quote semicolon. Again, so we have our winnings, we have our winnings image, and now I get to pick the winnings image inside the if statement. If the door I'm opening is the car door, you want a car. Winnings equals car. We already had that. And also winnings image equals car image. I refer to the constant from up above. So notice up here, there's something called car image. And I'm just saying, yeah, use that link. As you can imagine, down here, if they won the goat, winnings image equals goat image. Again, this is the constant that I declared up here. Not too bad. And now all I need to do is actually change the source of this image tag to that link. You can imagine document.getElementById by ID is coming up again. Document.getElementById by ID. And remember, it's winning image here is what I actually called it. I guess I should have maybe called it winnings image, but yeah, something that could be fixed. But in fact, you know what? I'm going to do it. It's kind of confusing to have winning and winnings not pluralized in combination with each other, like one being winnings and one being winning. That's just going to make me mistype something later. Okay, now I don't want to set the inner text here. I want to set the source, this src thing. So let's do that. .src equals. What should the source be? Well, I spent all this time figuring out what that source should be in this winnings image link variable that I made. So let's just set it equal to the link we already found, winnings image. Okay, so let's play the game. I'm going to press the button 2 here. Why not? Let's keep. It has a car. Oh no, I forgot to actually update my CSS to say winnings image. It's going to bite me at some point, right? All right, so if I go into CSS and add that S in there too, so that everything says winnings image, this is the trouble I get myself into, then the width of the image is the right width. And notice it's a car, as it was supposed to. Okay, it's going to show me a goat too. Let's restart. Let's press 3. Let's keep. Oh, I'm getting lucky. I'm one a car again. Let's press 3 again. Let's keep. Okay, that didn't work. Or did it? I didn't do anything there. It just took a bit of time to load the goat in. Why did it show me the car for a little while first? The answer is because it had been a car the last time. And so what we need to do is to fix it so that when the game begins, the image is cleared out. So to do that, I just need to go to my restart game and do the same thing I did up here, which is document.get element by ID winnings image dot source. So let's do that. Well, I'm going to enter a new line here, and I'm going to make this yet again just a little bit bigger so I can see this previous line that I'm basically copying. Document dot get element by ID winnings image. I want to change the image and blank out the source. So dot source equals empty string. That way, when the game is restarted, the image has no previous holdover image from the previous game. So if I want a car the previous time, I'm just saying, you know what, blow away that image now. I want it to be an empty blank image for the moment, and then I'll set it up right at the end. That way, if the goat takes a bit of time to load in or the car takes a bit of time to load in, you don't have the wrong image showing for a bit and then it's switching to the right one at the last second. So let's see how this works. I press 2, press keep. Notice it was blank for a second, and then you saw the goat. Restart, 3, switch, it's a car. Notice it was blank for just a moment, and then it finally switched, updated to the car, and we got to see our wings. And that can finally be it. Our game is actually complete. Now, at this point, you might notice we haven't answered our original question, and that's what we're going to do in part 3. Is it better to keep or to switch? You could start to answer that question right now. This is a fully functioning game, so you could just sit here and be like, well, I'm going to press keep every time, and I won a goat that time, and I won a car that time, and I won a goat that time, So far, 1 out of 3 wins, and just keep a tally as you go. Of course, that's actually very inefficient. We don't really need to be the person pressing the button keep every time and picking a door. We can have the computer randomly choose a door for us, and we have the computer just press keep for us 10,000 times and actually see how many times we win and how many times we lose. So that's what we're going to do next time. We're going to make a modification to our program here to just have the computer play the game for us tens of thousands of times and finally answer the question, which is better to keep or switch? Until next time, thank you very much. Have a good one.